Hey, what's up, Superdads? So I'm here with a topic that probably seems like it's coming out of nowhere, but yesterday I watched a video by a guy who is very large and muscular and clearly knows things about working out, and it was a video on the topic of how to spend less time working out and still get good results. And some of the stuff he talked about was right on the money, but there was one point that he made, and not just made, but hammered a few times that I just could not disagree with a whole lot more than I do. Um, and that point was that if you want to save time with your workouts but still get good results, you cannot reduce your rest times between sets. It's just ridiculous. Uh, it's just ridiculous. Okay, let's talk about why this is ridiculous. Well, first of all, for most of you out there who are doing like a traditional approach to resistance training, your rest times between sets is a bit like the United States federal government's expenditures on defense, which is to say, it's about half of the time, if not more. You do a set of, let's say, dumbbell chest presses or something like that. How long do you think that set actually takes? I mean, for most people, unless you're doing a kind of HIIT training that is focused on slow controlled reps and you're trying to, reach failure between 45 to 90 seconds, for most people, your average set is going to take like 30 seconds, 40 seconds, something like that. And then you're resting for 2 minutes. I mean, at least a minute. There are very few programs that recommend resting less than a minute. And what are most people doing during that time? They're freaking looking at their phone, they're sending messages, they're losing their focus. I mean, come on. So it's like saying we need to reduce federal spending, we have to reduce the deficit, but we're not going to touch defense spending, which unfortunately is what happens basically with every administration. It's the same sort of deal. We're going to try to reduce our workout time, but we're only going to do it at the very edges, and we're going to do it by cutting spending on Social Security or Medicare or these sorts of things. I mean, that's basically what you're doing. And so, what the recommendations we get from this fellow, instead of cutting down your rest times, he's recommending you cut out warm up sets here and there. You structure the workout so that you don't need to do warm up sets there. You structure the workout so that you can do fewer sets of these things. Now, personally, I already do fewer sets of things. I incorporate a lot of stuff like drop sets, like rest pause sets, like pre-exhaustion, especially using isometric work. These sorts of protocols or tweaks, intensifiers, if you will, but I'm not actually necessarily using them to intensify the workout. I'm using them to get a higher volume of work done in a shorter amount of time. Okay. Now, as for warm-up sets, look, the reason that that's silly is because you shouldn't plan to not do warm-up sets. Whether you do warm-up sets or not should depend on how warmed up you feel, right? If, it's like I work out on my freaking veranda in winter in Japan, all right? And it gets cold. It gets cold out there. Now, I am going to add in extra warm-up sets during that time. Even if I did, let's say, a dumbbell chest press, and then I'm going on to dips after that, my chest should be warmed up, my shoulders should be ready to go, so I can probably skip the warm-up sets, right? Not if it's cold out, not if my shoulders don't feel like they're ready for weighted dips or something like that. I'm going to put in a warm-up set. So there needs to be responsiveness from you, auto regulation, where you feel what's happening for you and you make a sensible judgment in the moment about what is required. And this is one of my big issues with just the way that people go about planning a workout program, right? With a powerlifting plan, let's say, or it says this week you're supposed to be lifting this percentage of your max for this many repetitions and this many sets. Yeah, but what is your max on that day? Because that day's max is going to be affected. It's not your overall, it's not your PR. That's not your max. Your max on that day is going to change depending on how much sleep you got last night, whether you're dealing with a ton of family stress or work stress, right? Whether you're recovering from something, whether you've been sick recently, how much food you ate. I mean, it's a complex system, and the best judge you have of that is not going to be what some program that was designed by somebody who is completely out of touch with your life tells you you should be doing. It's going to be based upon your own internal judgments about your biofeedback, how well you're sleeping, yada yada, all of these things. Okay, so that is why it's a nonsense to try to cut from the edges, right? The margins. Let's reduce warm-up sets, all this nonsense. Do a warm-up set if you need a warm-up set. Okay, what you should be doing if you want to reduce the amount of workout time that you spend is cut the rest time. Cut the rest time. Now, his argument here was that you won't build muscle if you cut rest time because you won't be able to lift as heavy weights. But man, the misunderstanding here is like, it drives me nuts how this correlation causation thing, people still don't get this. You do not get stronger from because you lift heavier weights. You can lift heavier weights because you got stronger. Getting stronger precedes your ability to lift heavier weights. The ability to lift those heavier weights, the performance of that is just a demonstration of the strength. Now, why does it cause you? Yeah, I mean, yes, lifting a heavier weight can cause you to build more muscle. But let's say you lift a heavier weight, a weight that you haven't lifted before, but it's not a weight that pushes you anywhere near failure. That is not going to build muscle, right? That's not right. If I lift 1 kilogram today and I lift 2 tomorrow, that's progressive overload, but it's not going to build any muscle for me. What you need is to push your muscles to the point where they are deeply fatigued, where they are proximal to failure for some extended enough period of time that it crosses the threshold to create an adaptive stimulus that drives hypertrophy. When it comes to strength, you need to practice with heavy weights. You need to practice with, but that doesn't mean that you need to lift heavier weights each time. You could do more reps. You could do, reps with better technique. You could slow the reps down. All of these things will build strength, and all of them can build muscle as well. And so this focus on you can't rest longer because if you rest longer, you can't shorten your rest periods because if you shorten your rest periods, you won't be able to lift weights as heavy. Who freaking cares? The point is, did you push the muscles hard enough? And one way to push them hard is to rest for shorter, so they have less recovery time. So then you can get more quality work done on them. You can get in more effective reps, without adding up all of that extra junk volume that is required to get into the effective rep range, or where you're proximal enough to failure. Okay, it's nuts. So, how do I do this? I train with very minimal rest between each each set, let's say, whether I'm switching exercises, whether I'm doing, some double sets, which I occasionally do. I do like 2 sets of something if I feel like, it was a balance issue or a stability issue that limited my performance of that exercise, right? Maybe I'll take 30 seconds or something like that. But that's the most, right? Just to get so that I'm sure I can get another couple quality reps in. Things like myo reps or rest pause are a perfect example of why you do not need a lot of rest time in order to get a lot of hypertrophic stimulation. You can lift lighter weights and still get the same stimulus if you are pushing the muscles hard. Okay, so absolutely cut down your rest time. Now, the other argument there was that, well, you're going to be limited by your cardiovascular fitness. If you have any extended experience at all with exercise, you're going to know whether you are being limited, whether your rate limiting factor or your ability to perform is being limited by your cardiovascular fitness versus your strength / muscular stamina, or some combination of those things. you're going to know they feel different. So if you're doing, a Widowmaker with back squats, where you're doing a 20 reps of continuous of back squats without re-racking the bar, that is one where it will absolutely challenge your cardiovascular fitness. You will be like this under the bar, and you'll know I have to recover cardiovascularly, even if my legs could perform another rep. Conversely, if you're doing, bicep curls and you hit failure and then you rest for a few seconds and you do another set instead of waiting for 2 minutes, okay, that is not going to be your cardiovascular limitations keeping you from getting extra reps. It's going to be the buildup of lactic acid. It's going to be the use of all the glycogen in your muscle. Okay, it's muscular fatigue. That's what you want. That's what you're going for. It's not something to be avoided, and they feel very, very different. And one other point on this would be if your ability to perform something like a chest press is limited by your cardiovascular fitness, then you need to work on your cardio anyway. And if going quickly from exercise to exercise is challenging your cardiovascular fitness, then it's going to improve your cardiovascular fitness, specifically in your ability to perform lifts like that, exercises like that in that manner. That's exactly what you need. Why the heck would you avoid it? Don't go over to the treadmill and get cardio over there, because that cardio probably won't translate to lifting. These are different athletic pursuits. So if your cardio is limiting you, all right, keep pushing yourself, and pretty soon it will cease to be the limiting factor and it'll go back to your muscles being the limiting factor, and that's great. That means you've improved your capacity, your work capacity, if you want to call it that. Okay, there is nothing wrong with short breaks. There's nothing wrong at all. So here's what I do. I keep them short. I measure it based upon this. Am I breathing through my nose? Am I doing nasal breathing more or less comfortably? If I'm going to give myself a little bit more time to recover before I go to the next thing. I'm going to give myself a little more time. But if I'm more or less breathing comfortably through my nose, then I know I can go to the next exercise, even if my muscles are still feeling fatigued, because I want to take advantage of that. I'm in the effective rep zone there. I want to maximize my opportunities there. I want to maximize those opportunities. All right. And then one other thing about this is you have to think about these rest times the same way you would think about the powerlifting example before, where today I'm scheduled to lift this much percentage of my max lift, this many reps, this many sets. Well, rest times are very similar to that. It's something that's being prescribed. It's not the way people approach this, they're not making space for auto regulation. And what I just described there, the nose breathing mechanism, the way that I can tell based upon my own breathing pattern, whether I'm ready to go or whether I need a little bit more time in order to perform an effective set, that's an example of autoregulation. And autoregulation will, in almost every single instance, will serve you better than just following something that's written down on paper. Because what's written down on paper is aimed at some idealized or some average avatar of a human being. It's not aimed at you specifically. What's written on the paper doesn't know what's going on inside your body like you know what's going on inside your body. The best way to find something that will not fit you is to get the thing that fits the average person, because the average is nobody. Nobody is the average. That person doesn't exist, and you certainly aren't the average. Okay, so look at rest times the same way you'd look at that kind of nonsense. You're supposed to make this much progress. Okay, fine, but I didn't sleep well last night and I'm cutting over a cold, but I'm feeling well enough to train. So am I still supposed to rest that much time? How about I just jump in and feel how it feels? Engaging in autoregulation, using your own judgment, and then getting the feedback of how do you feel the next day? Did you get stronger during that work? Or were you able to demonstrate greater strength, let's say? How did the reps feel? Did you sleep well? All of these, that kind of feedback based upon, I made this judgment, I got this kind of feedback, I got these kind of results. That's what makes you wiser, and that's what actually moves you from being a beginner to being an intermediate to being an expert. It is not how much you're able to lift or what kind of exercises you're able to do. It's your understanding of how to engage with the activity. As your understanding gets more complex and you see how more things are connected and how they influence one another, that is where you build expertise and wisdom. Okay, that's all I got to say. Thank you so much. I'm working on a new program I'm really excited about, and so I'll be putting a link for that in the descriptions. Maybe not today, but very soon. So if you like my programs, keep an eye out for that. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much to everybody who likes and shares and does all that YouTube stuff. Anyway, thank you so much for your attention. Take it easy, everyone.